Do. That's a song called Nuke the Sun by a band called The Gobs, and I've listened to it 1,000 times this week. Oh, wrong podcast. 2, 3, 4. Do, 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 do. Hi. How? Let me just float something past you. How would you maybe feel about some picks of the week, huh? Ba-dum. That's the fanfare. So, I find myself back here in beautiful Los Angeles, California, and if you don't think LA is beautiful, spend 11 days in Long Beach, California, and you'll be whistling a different tune, especially when you live on the Tony West side, as I do. I don't know how they let us in. But, so I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but this means since I wasn't home for the last 11 days, I haven't really taken any comics home, nor did I take any with me to Long Beach to read. I took a few, but nothing that I'm 3 weeks behind. And so these picks of the week are actually from the previous week, and I'll have to catch up as time goes on. Like, we all have lockers at our, they're like a little thing. And mine was always empty because I would always buy everything that I wanted. But yeah, since I've been slowing down and since I've been not able to take as much stuff home, that locker is full, Jackson. Fortunately, it's all full of comics nobody else gives a poop about but me. But anyway, so these, like I say, these two are picks of they came out a week ago. And I'm like 3 weeks behind now on my reading, so I picked stuff that I didn't need to read the stack I had before I got to. First, I guess I'll do this one first. Magic Order, Volume 2, Number 6. This has been a very fun series, and I still enjoy Mark Millar's work. I feel like I say that every time. Mark Millar, if you're unaware, is a very popular comic book writer, and he is known for being aggressively pro-Hollywood. This would be a way to say it. All of his comics are essentially storyboards for future films. And I'm sure I've gone on this little harangue before. A lot of people, and I don't completely disagree, a lot of people feel that that's not very good comic book making. I mean, I probably would argue that point a little harder in my 20s, but at this point I just don't give a crap anymore. They've made some very bad movies out of his comics. Wanted is the first one that leaps to mind. The first Kick-Ass movie is supposed to be really good. I never saw it because I read the comic, and then when I went to see the trailer, the opening scene of the trailer, which I'm assuming is the opening scene of the movie, was the exact same as the comic. It was the exact same shot, narration, everything. And I went, oh, well, all right. It was strange because a lot of comic book nerds, myself very much included, often complain that movie adaptations don't get it right, whatever the hell that means. And here we had a film that got it as near as I could, and grant you, it was only for the first few opening seconds of the trailer/film, but got it exactly right. And I couldn't have been less interested in that. I already read this. I don't need to pay $20 to sit in a room full of people I don't like because they're at the movies with me. So, but I mean, I do remember, like, not long after that, I remember I was at a party or something. Or no, I was with some friends, and we stopped by another friend's house or something like that. Yeah, that was it. And the dude whose house it was like, he had Kick-Ass in his hand, because he answered the door with it, because he had been reading it. And I went, oh, are you a comic book guy? Because, of course, that's the only time I want to have a conversation with someone. And he went, no, but I love the movie. And I went, oh, yeah, well, then you probably like that, because it's the exact same. Lately, though, Millar has set his sights less on the big screen and more on the small screen. I want to say in 2017, he signed a first look sort of a deal with the good people at Netflix. And so far they have had their first looks, and then they've passed almost. Well, not immediately. They had a season of Jupiter's Legacy, which got canceled immediately. I think even like the week it came out. I don't know how they do things at Netflix. No one does really, but that got canceled immediately. There is currently an animated version of Super Crooks on Netflix, which I haven't seen, but I'm assuming has also been canceled. Uh, what else has Millar made? But that's the thing, is that Millar has made so many comics. He also wrote Civil War for Marvel, which was a huge thing. And even though the Captain America film of the same name was very different, I think Millar got a thank you at the end with all the other creators they don't pay very much. Which brings me back to Magic Order. I think, if I'm not very much mistaken, Magic Order was the first property of his that Netflix... They released the first series as a joint public... Like, Netflix was publishing it as a comic. And at the time, I didn't read up on it a lot, but I was under the impression, a very educated guess, that they were going to release this comic, trying to get people excited for it in that way. I mean, with Stuart Immonen on art, you can't lose there. Stuart Immonen drew Next Wave with Warren Ellis, which is still one of my favorite Marvel comics, and a bunch of others. Him and his wife both, in fact, Catherine Immonen, did a Hellcat series a few years back that I loved. But I digress. I had been when Magic Order came out, I was under the impression that they were going to do the comic, try to drum up interest, and then release the show like within the year or so. That didn't happen. And then out of nowhere, and then like I heard nothing about it for a while, and then they started a new series about 6 months ago, and I was like, oh, okay. Are you going to do it now then? And they still haven't. But suffice it to say, I really like this book. I'm not even what you would call a magic guy, but Magic Order is not. I do like stories about magic and magicians and wizards and stuff like that, but I do tend to prefer the more sort of modern take, and that's what the Magic Order is. The Magic Order itself is a family of magicians who essentially are in charge of magic, and of course there are people out there trying to dethrone them, and that's pretty much what's going on. The ins and outs of the plot are not really... I don't even remember most of the characters' names, to be honest with you, because like most of Millar's characters, they're all kind of the same. Very Kingsman, that's another Mark Millar thing, and so a lot of his characters are British, and in that same vein. Did they call it the King? Yeah, they changed it to the Kingsman. I think it used to be called Secret Service. That was what the original comic was called, Secret Service, and they made it to that Kingsman movie, which I haven't seen any of those, but frankly, they look really good. I just never got around to them. And I mostly picked this because there just wasn't a whole lot else to pick for this. The clear favorite, the one I was definitely going to pick before I left the shop today, was Astro City. That was then special number one. Astro City, is I'm sure I've mentioned, but I'll mention again, is a series written by Kurt Busiek and drawn by Brent Anderson, and they've been doing it, I want to say, since the mid-90s, on and off. Kurt Busiek, for all of his, for how prolific he is, apparently also suffers from some kind of health troubles. So there will go years without him working much, and even more years in between Astro City. But when he gets back to it, it's always great. They also released, and I'll probably show it off when I get it, they released, since it's been years, it started on Image and then eventually went to Vertigo. That was the last series, and that was almost 10 years ago that started. And then I kind of lost track, because I love Astro City, but I always lose interest somewhere along the line in any series. But now they're doing these collections. I think it's going to be like a definitive, they call it the Metro book. So I'm going to buy those and get my Astro City fix that way. Because even though Astro City was on Vertigo, as I learned recently through another rambling of mine, Vertigo wasn't all creator owned, but it was mostly like the. I'm pretty sure Astro City is still Kurt Busiek. Is my point. So they can reprint those Vertigo books, which is going to be cool. I have a lot of them, but I don't have all of them. And having them at this point, my collection is so unwieldy, to say the very least, that it kind of does make more sense for me to buy trade collections of stuff that even if I already own it, because even if it's not in San Diego at my mother's garage, it's in this pit, which I defy you to find anything. Those picks of the week, So last week, here we go. First up, I read Count Crowley, Amateur Midnight Monster Hunter. I did not realize that this was a second series. There was a mini-series called Count Crowley, something else Midnight Monster Hunter. I looked into it, and I did enjoy this. The art by who did the art? I mean, the story was good, but the art was really what sold me. Lucas Kettner, who I don't know, but he's got a very. I mean, this book is very clearly borrowing liberally from EC comics of the 70s or the 50s and Bronze Age 70s horror comics, which also borrowed liberally from the EC comics of the 50s. But Kettner's got a very Eric Powell thing going here for him, and it really works. And like with Eric Powell, whose work I do enjoy, it's really more the art that I like than the story anyway. And there's a lot of monsters and stuff like that too. It's a lot of fun. I'm probably not going to buy the first series, but I can check it out from the library, so I'm going to do that. In fact, my boss gave me an old tablet from the store that they bought a couple tablets for free comic book day, and they didn't like how they worked, so they bought a couple new ones for this year's free comic book day. First Saturday of May, which would be May 7th in the year 2022, if you're in the Lake Balboa area of Van Nuys, California, drop on by, and I will be shooing children and grown men alike away from my back issues. Get out of here. I forwarded the back issues at the shop. That's my department. And I've brought this up a couple times. I think we should just throw a tarp over it when I'm not there and not sell any of them and don't let anybody go through them. Oh, that's not the point. It's going to not sell. I mean, come on. It's so last year. But in his old tablet, it still works perfectly fine, and it's way nicer to read comics on than my Kindle. So, another minor goal achieved. I have a better thing to read comics digitally. I also read Pentagram of Horror #1. This was a real dark horse, and boy, was it. Speaking of art, both of these books, the story were fine, but it was really the art. And as you are probably aware, I love our Dark Lord Satan, and there was a lot. So the story, I think all 5 of these are in a similar vein to like Silver Coin, where they're like kind of short morality tales, little sci-fi, little Twilight Zone. But where's that spread? I'm gonna blow the centerfold, even though it's not exactly in the center of the book. Where the hell is it? Ugh. Oh, there it is. Spreads like this. I'm gonna buy your book. It's got an upside down pentagram and a guy being tortured in hell. Fun stuff, great stuff, good stuff. But there's a whole lot to report on it. It's a 5-issue series, so that'll be great. And then finally, I read Hulk Grand Design #1. Now, for one thing, I didn't go back and look yet, but I feel like I kept calling this Life Story because there is a series of. They did a Spider-Man life story, and they did a Fantastic Four life story, and I think they did a Fantastic Four life story. I think I was conflating that with Tom Scioli's Fantastic Four Grand Design. The Grand Design books, which I don't think I mentioned, I might have mentioned it, but I don't think I explained it very well. The central conceit of the Grand Design series began with Ed Piscor's X-Men book, Grand Design, and what Piscor was doing was drawing a line from the very beginning of X-Men history, which is thousands of years before X-Men #1, Uncanny X-Men #1, and then all the way through to now. So he was trying to show that the story from Stan Lee to Roy Thomas to Chris Claremont to everybody else, there is like an overarching storyline, and it's all over the place and it's very goofy and stuff. But he did a really good job. And then Scioli did the Fantastic Four, which I have started reading, and I really like Scioli. I love his artwork and I love how into Kirby he is. But I don't know. I feel like this Grand Design thing works best with the X-Men. But maybe that's just me. Maybe now, because the title Grand Design, that's what the implication is. There is a grand design to all of this. But the Fantastic Four and Hulk Grand Design books so far are just kind of, hey, remember when this was a thing? So, and it's also, because both, though, the X-Men has a very, notoriously convoluted continuity. A convoluted where there's so many different aspects of the X-Men story. It started as teenagers at a school for gifted children who had superpowers, and then it became an international cadre of superpowered mutants. And then there was a whole thing where they were in space for years and years, and then there was the Phoenix Saga, and then there was this and that, and then they fought Arcade, and they went to England a bunch because Claremont's an Anglophile. All this stuff, and then there was all this stuff in the 90s, and it's so dumb and convoluted, and there's been so many X-Men comics that Piscor was trying to kind of simplify it down, basically to just Uncanny X-Men, not dismissing anything else. But Hulk and FF have really only ever had the one title. I mean, there's been other Hulk titles. They've restarted that title a million times. There's never really ever been more than one at a time, though. And the FF is even less. The Fantastic Four went the longest before getting canceled and then restarted in the mid to late 90s after the Onslaught incident or event. But there's not really that same sort of line to be drawn. But it does look very much like the Grand Design books all now have the paper's not of any lesser quality, but it looks more like 70s newsprint type paper. And Rugg is really good at, and it's like a lot of stuff like this. It's more almost like a greatest hits. And it goes in order. It goes chronologically from Hulk #1. And then, of course, they always have these annotations in the back for your really nerdy types. So yeah, this is great. It was a lot of fun. The Hulk has always been one of my favorite characters. And you got pages like that. It's also cool because as he's telling the Hulk story, he's also kind of telling it in the real world. This was during the TV era. So I feel like it's good, and I'm definitely going to buy the rest of them. I think there's usually only, Piscor did 6. I think Scioli only did 2, but they were really oversized. I think Rugg's got 3 in the hopper. They're all going to be #1s because that's how stupid everything is. It's not even a #1. It's Monster is the first number, I believe, and then I think the next one. What is the next one? Madness. All right. Anything to avoid numbering anything, because they apparently feel that anything above #1, they're like, well, nobody's going to buy it. Okay, I mean, maybe you're right, but maybe stop giving them the option. I don't know. And that was Picks of last week. Was that all I wanted to say about the Grand Design? I think it was. So hopefully this weekend I can get some reading in, but who knows? I actually have a comedy show on Sunday too. But I also have. I'll bore you with that next week.